This happened to me back in 2005, right after I graduated university. I live in a small town near the outskirts of London. It's not creepy or out of the way or anything, but it can get quite deserted at night. The night in question, me and a bunch of mates were all gonna get together and go down to Fabric in central London. I was getting ready to leave the house when my girlfriend Sarah called with a bit of a problem, prompting me to tell my friends that they should go on without me, and I'll meet them there. I hopped on the bus and headed to hers. A few hours later, I'd helped her sort through her crisis and was thinking, I better make a move and head to the club. I asked if she wanted to come several times. She insisted she felt better and wanted to stay home, knowing better than to test her resolve. I left it at that and called a minicab. I was waiting for the cab at the front of the driveway when Sarah joined me for the wait. We were kissing when the car drove up. This was my first sign that something was wrong. We didn't hear him pull up because he was driving really slowly with their headlights off. The only reason he grabbed our attention was because he turned his bright lights at us. It was old ice cream Mercedes station wagon. Ignored whatever apprehension I had because I thought I just had an overactive imagination. Okay. So we pulled up quietly. So what? Knowing what I do now, I'm so happy Sarah never agreed to come with me. I got in the cab and told this guy that I wanted to head a Fabric in central London. He just nodded his head while looking into the driver's side wing mirror. I said, "Did you hear me, mate?" He nods again, this time also letting a yes slip out. "That's quite a fare," he said, all the while staring at the window. That's when I realized what he was staring at in his mirror. It was Sarah, walking back up the driveway. I was about to react when she got to the front door, but the cabbie beat me to it, turning and saying, "Can't have the little lady going in unescorted now, can we?" All manner of deviants out there. This threw me a bit, as his whole behavior was off. But I also knew that's what I would have done had it been the other way around. Maybe this guy had kids himself. I decided to just talk to him, break the ice, and after about 5 minutes, I felt it easy as we slipped into a familiar conversation, footy and women. It was all okay, until he started telling me about his ex and best friend. They'd been hooking up behind his back, and how he kicked the ever-living shit out of his best friend for it. Then he started fixating on his ex, saying how all women were whores and liars, and were only out for themselves, that men are only there to pay off their debts and wants. He even tried to justify a time when he kicked the shit out of her, saying that men can be excused from their actions if appropriately provoked. Then it got even weirder. He started talking to me about men and trans men, and then he started talking about them in a disgusting way. And then he said, "Although some ladies are mighty fine, I like that last of yours." He turned to stare at me through the mirror, almost testing my reaction. I'm man enough to say that I was freaking the fuck out by this point at not only the conversation, but at the fact that the mobile phone I'd forgotten to charge had died halfway through this rant. Not one to show fear, I asked him to stop off an ATM so I could get cash out to pay him at the end of the journey. He agrees, and for a moment, I feel like it's all going to be over in a second, when he says that before he does that, he needs to start to take a piss. That's better. I thought, I can sneak out when he's pissing and bolt off. He turned off the main road and went through a random residential area, before we finally found ourselves going down a dirt road and heading toward the woods. "Mate, where the hell are we going? You can take a piss anywhere." He replied something along the lines that it was safer in the words. That's when I noticed it. But this particular car had no unlocked feature on the back, and a very quiet, slow tongue on the door handle revealed that the child lock was on. I was trapped. He stopped the car near the edge of the woods and turned around and asked if I wanted to join him, but I declined and said that I was in a hurry, and asked him to hurry himself. This seemed to anger him, and he slammed the door and vanished. I waited about 1 minute and tried to climb out the driver's side, but it was locked too. I was scared that my movement had alerted of the cabbie just outside. Having tried and failed to restart my phone, I looked around to see if he had a phone or some kind of device that I could communicate with. But nothing. I have done nearly 10 minutes. After 10 minutes had gone by, I worked myself up to smashing the windows, figuring that this was in no way a normal situation, and that abnormal measures could be taken. Just as I was getting in position, I heard a loud crash. It sounded like a massive branch. It just hit the leaves below. I froze, not moving a muscle, not even my lungs. I wanted to be able to hear everything just at the moment. As my ears slowly turned in, I began to hear two very distinct sounds, but both in intervals. The first was a rustling sound, but it wasn't the wind. It sounded more like birds flying through the trees all at once. The second was a squelching slam. The slam only occurred 3 times, whereas all the rustling was quite often. Then silence again. I decided not to wait any longer. My imagination was going wild as to what those sounds were. I just wanted to get away as fast as my legs could carry me. I leaned back and thrust my legs out as hard as I could and kicked the back seat window through. It shattered, and I wasted no time in shimmying through the broken window and outside. That's when it happened. My eyes focused in the dark, and I began to see that the ground was littered all around me with clothes, children's clothes and the odd toy. Was so busy looking around that I didn't notice him. Walked straight up to me from behind and grabbed me by the nape. "Where are you going, friend? I still need to take you down Central." I noticed his shirt was off. He was sweating profusely and was covered in dirt, and in his hand he had a fucking knife, like a full-on kitchen knife, and there was something on it. I said, "What the fuck, man? What are you doing?" He replied something to the effect that he had some foul traps out in the woods, and he was checking on them for game. He offered to show me, recognizing that if I went with him, it would probably be the last choice I made. I twisted my body as much as I could and punched him square in the face, and I run. I run as fast as I could. He yelled after me, "See you soon." I ignored him and kept running, even though we'd driven quite far, at least 5 to 6 miles. I still legged it all the way back and straightened the cops and told them everything. They said they would check it out and sent me home in a squad car. The next morning, I called Sarah and went over right away to check on her. I still wasn't over the creepy way. The cabbie had been staring at her, and since he had picked me up from hers, he knew where she lived. I told her the story when I was done. She just stared at me in disbelief, not knowing what to say. She just hugged me. At that point the police rang and I went outside to take the call. They told me that they went to check the specific area I mentioned, finding none of the clothes or toys I'd seen. Neither was there any sign of foul traps or a knife. They did mention finding a few pieces of cut-up rope, but with nothing to go on. They just insinuated I was having a laugh at their expense. I then called the minicab company, figuring I could at least launch a complaint against the wacko. They said they had no record of a car picking me up that night. One had been sent, but by the time it arrived, no one was waiting. This creeped me out all over again. How had he found me then? Was it random? Was I chosen? Could he have been listening in to their private car radio network or something? I left Sarah's and headed back to mine. She was gonna join me after helping her mom do some chores, and I wanted to go chill for a while. I should mention at this point, me and Sarah are now happily married, and that all is well. However, that day after I got home from hers and I took a shower, I wandered over to the window. What I saw sent a chill down my spine, and it still does. Whenever I think about it, I saw it. That fucking cream Mercedes station wagon and the crazy cabbie staring at me with such a cold, empty look on his face, until he slowly smiled and drove off. He told me I'd seen him again. He wanted me to see him. Wanted me to know he could find me when he wanted. I still don't understand how he followed me, or what his intentions were. And I've never told Sarah about this last incident. About a year later, I took out a loan and moved. Me and Sarah to another part of the country, and my parents followed soon after. Over the years, I've pondered what he was going to do, where he wanted to lead me, what the noises were. How had he found me when he stopped clean up the spot in the woods? But most of all, why had he even pucked me that night? It was me and not some other poor victim who might not have reacted as I did.